Listen, to set the stage, it's the most competitive category in the world when it comes to food. There's no more competitive category. When we went to market, I think it was 67 iterations we were in, and it was very fucking hard. Data, solve a problem, fill a need. I didn't have this last piece, which was make sure you yourself are a diehard consumer. I tried a lot of shit. At one point, I was even trying to get into the bra space, right? When I was like 22.
Look at Gaga. She's the creative director of Polaroid.
What the fuck do I know about bras?
I like some of the Gaga songs. What the fuck does she know about cameras?
Everybody has a vice. So the second you're not presented with the true facts, if you present unauthentically this perfect version of yourself every time you come into a work environment, you're already creating a facade.
It's all a fugazi.
Of
Fugazi, it's a wazi, it's a woozy.
What we're selling is a vibe. And that vibe is, if you're somebody who wants to make shit happen in life, just fucking do it however you fucking please.
Welcome to the Generation Hustle Podcast, the show that explores the world of business, entrepreneurship, and culture, all centered around the millennial. I'm your co-host Sherison, alongside my good friend Amin, and today we have a loaded episode, loaded with fudge. Episode 36 is with Nick Saltarelli of Midday Squares. Nick is the co-founder of Midday Squares alongside his wife, Lezlie Karls, and brother-in-law, Jake Karls. Midday Squares is a first functional chocolate bar, or their take on the ideal, healthy afternoon craving killer. It started with Lezlie creating homemade fudge bars to solve the afternoon cravings while also keeping the junk away. What started as a home experiment quickly became the seed for a business idea. Today, the company has sold over 1 million units and is available in grocery stores across the country. So we sit down for an unfiltered, uncensored, free-for-all chat with Nick to hear his take on the journey thus far. He talks about how they grew the business in one of the most saturated industries on the market, how they manage their work and family relationship, and more importantly, how being your authentic self is the key to success. This is a fun chat with so many gems throughout that we're sure you'd love. So grab your favorite snack, hey, maybe it's Midday Squares, and click play. Love it. So let's get right into it, man. With Midday Squares, we've caught a bit of your story, but we wanted to get a little bit more insight into kind of how you guys came up with the idea behind it. Obviously, it looks like you guys are always on the go and you need something fast to eat, and that's kind of what brought that up. So how'd that come up?
Yeah, I think there was a lot of data that went into the decision. I think that's the part that a lot of people don't realize about Midday Squares is how data-driven we are as a company and how methodical this process was. It was like, this is by no means an accident, any of this that's happened. And one of the main things is like my wife and I, so we knew that there was a huge opportunity in afternoon snacking. That was like the thesis before anything. And afternoon snacking is just as big as the morning segment. Mm-hmm. I think it's like by a few percentages points, less or minus, right? Yeah, but it's as big, and nobody gives it the love it deserves. Everybody goes after breakfast, from fast food, from Starbucks to it's always about breakfast, morning shakes, get your stuff, fast on the go. And then you have this incredible segment of the afternoon snacking, which is huge and just wasn't getting a lot of love. So that was like thesis number one. Let's create a product which is literally for me, because I don't know about you guys, I literally have a sweet tooth, or I if we could have called the product this, I'll do the sound, a little, that's what I say. I need a little something. You know what I'm saying? It's like, if that sound could have been the product name, it would have been the product name. And so, afternoon was a huge thing. And Les was making a version of fudge for me for a while, but it wasn't obvious, believe it or not, that was going to be our product that we were going to go to market with. And then I got this incredible research report from someone that's really in the industry, is in the mergers and acquisition side of CPG food specifically. So there's so much data that was there that was being shared with me consistently. And the one that really punched me in the stomach was the report that showed, basically it was a report that distilled down the growth of the real chocolate segment and the vegan protein bar market, which I knew was on a tear, but I didn't realize how big of a tear it was still on. how mature those two markets were.
Right.
And believe it or not, and this is like, if you're listening and there's, at the end of the day, everybody said that the market we were entering into was one of the most saturated markets in the world, which it is, but there was clearly a defined space for us to enter. And it became super obvious once we saw that mixed with what my wife was making, that this was the thing we wanted to dedicate our time to.
So what your wife was making, was that already vegan? Like, were you already vegan before any of this, or was that kind of just like the data took you there?
Yeah, no. We were. So I think decision making has got to be data and art. It's a big piece that I learned in the mistakes I've made in my life and the failures I've had, was when you go just on data, you miss a big part of the component of, well, A, is this true to you? Do you actually love the category you're entering? Those are very important pieces that will lead to success. So for us, it was absolutely real. And I think our branding goes around it. So to answer your question, we are not vegans. We are 70% of our diet is plant-based or vegan, right? It just naturally is. My stomach handles plant-based better than it does meats or dairies. It does not mean that I don't love a steak every now and then. And so naturally, my wife, when she was exploring kind of our diet, and she's an incredible cook. Plant-based became so huge that she was messing around with all sorts of incredible recipes. And so, fudge was developed, and it was plant-based. It just didn't have the macros that we needed to go to a market with, and it didn't have the supply chain built around it in order to manufacture at scale. So that's where the 9 months of development with McGill University came into play.
Yeah. So how was those early iterations, like, in comparison to what your wife was making at home? Like how different was that? And like, how was that process?
So what she was making originally had all of these incredible recipes that people make online, that you see on TikTok, you see on the gram, you see in all these places. Nobody's counting macros, right? So everything looks great and dandy, but nobody's counting macros. The original fudge recipe had 24 grams of sugar in it. So even though it was natural sugars with dates and all that, when you calculate, it's 24 grams of sugar. So could you imagine our label would have had to carry 24 grams of sugar? It was obvious that was just not what we would be able to do. And it only had like 8 grams of protein in it. And so it took, you know what? It's actually becoming foggy to me, but it took anywhere from 60 to 80 iterations. I forget the exact number.
Wow.
To nail the current fudge, and it's even developed further since we went to market. But when we went to market, I think it was 67 iterations we were in, and it was very fucking hard to get the product to taste great the way we wanted to when we lost all that sugar.
Yeah. Did you get sick of it at any point? Like, I'm assuming you're eating all this to test it every single time. So like 80 iterations, dude, that's a lot.
By the time we went to market, I was pretty tired of fudge, but we were already on development of the next flavor, so I had a new thing to test on. And it's interesting now that we have 3 flavors in the market. I get to right now I'm just crushing peanut butters. I can't stop eating them. And eventually I'll get tired out of that. I'll probably go back to fudge, and then back to almond, back to peanut butter. You just kind of rinse and repeat. But
can you actually talk to us about how like competitive the food space is? Just given like we see like a lot more products come out, especially within your category recently. So like protein, vegan, whatever it may be, and just how difficult it is to actually create a product. A lot of people think, hey, I have an idea for a food product. I can just go for it and quickly create something. But like to your point, it took you 80 times to get something right.
Yeah, 8 times a year, food development with McGill. I mean, listen, to set the stage, it's the most competitive category in the world when it comes to food. There's no more competitive category. It was like we literally chose the NBA in its prime and to go enter it. And it's like, it really is. That's how competitive. So the average, just to set the stage, the average grocery store, big scale grocery store, has anywhere from 20 to 35,000 SKUs. That's just think about it. You walk into a grocery store, just off the top, there's about 20 to 35. A small grocery store at minimum will have 10,000 SKUs. Then our category in the non-refrigerated protein aisle is like 20 feet. It's 20 feet of small little products this big, stacked ceiling to length.
Yeah.
There's a new company launching literally every day. Every day, there's a new company launching in the space. Here's, though, where all that goes out the window. See, I don't actually see it as a competitive space. I don't even think the food space is that competitive, to be honest. What's competitive is putting out shit products. That's competitive.
Yeah.
Where there's so few people driving true innovation. And like I always tell customers when we go find me right now in the grocery store one other product that tastes like Midday Squares. Go. You have 30 minutes to do it. You can't do it because it's truthfully a differentiated product. I won't name names because I don't believe in throwing people under the bus. I think every entrepreneur and brand, if they're just out there hustling, they have my respect. But some do less in innovation. And if I were to blindfold you, it would be very difficult for you to even tell the two differences between the two. So if you're entering into commodity food space with no differentiating, it's fucking hard. It's very, very hard. You want to sell olive oil? Good luck getting a buyer's attention. But believe it or not, buyers are there to find innovative products. And so it's not as hard as one thinks when you go after true innovation. And that holds true for everything I've tried in my life. To be honest, everything I do in my life going forward, whether it's Midday Squares or not, if it succeeds or doesn't, will be extremely hard shit. Because extremely hard stuff doesn't have a lot of competition.
Tougher the challenge, more the reward, right? So
which led us to manufacturing. Like 90% of brands that exist at grocery right now do not own their own manufacturing plant. Think about what other industry exists that the core competency is outsourced. It makes no sense, but the food industry does it all the time. That would be like Google saying we're starting Google tomorrow, but we're outsourcing all of our fucking engineering to some other company. Like it makes no sense.
Yeah, that's crazy. So what was that aha moment for you? Like, was there one, or was it a series of one for you?
It was a series of them over the course of a decade, I would say. I really started getting serious about entrepreneurship around 17. Was like my first foray into really trying to get into it. And from 17 to now, which I'm 32, has been a series of a lot of aha moments that led to Midday Squares. And that's the same for my wife. That's the same for Jake. And to distill those things, it's actually pretty simple. The major aha moment is build products for massive markets, number one. Massive markets. I've tried doing niche stuff. It's just as hard, except your chance of massive success is way smaller.
Slim, yeah.
So you might as well go after massive markets. That's like aha number one. So chocolate, check. It's the largest consumed snacking item in the world. It transcends, it's not just North America, is not just the big players for chocolate. We can have success in Europe. We can have success in Africa. We can have success in a lot of places. So that's one. Two is if you yourself and your homies can't rally around the product or the thing that you're trying to put out into the world, probably not a great thing to go try and do. I tried a lot of shit. At one point, I was even trying to get into the bra space, right? When I was like 22. What the fuck do I know about bras? You know what I'm saying? But I was following data, right? I was at that point of my entrepreneurial career where I was like, data, solve a problem, fill a need. I didn't have this last piece, which was make sure you yourself are a diehard consumer, which I am. Like I'm a diehard chocolate bar guy. So check.
Yeah.
And then the last piece is to make sure that your founding team is ultra tight. That core team that's going to go execute is really differentiated in their skill set and really is the best at what they do. And the magic was right for Midday Squares. So that aha moment, like you said, was there. It was like, we got a category, we got a product, and we got a team to do this. Let's go all in.
I love that breakdown. I want to kind of take it back a little bit. Can you talk to us about maybe like your biggest fuck up moment then? And I know you mentioned that like you're always driven by data and you did have some hiccups. Maybe it was a bra thing, or maybe it's something related to Midday Squares. Like what would you say is probably your biggest fuck up?
So I know this is cheesy, but I want to say that obviously none of them were fuck ups because it got me here, right? So that is the key. But if we were to go into the distill of what has gone wrong, what were some of my major learnings? There's a lot of them. So after I made a bit of money with a software company, I made a decent chunk of change, nothing life changing. I was making $150,000 bets on myself of different ideas, and I really thought I can apply some of the knowledge I had to high end fashion, like really high end. That's how I met my wife, actually. Right. I was incapable of selling a single item in 1 year. I didn't sell one single item online for a year. Blow close to 200. I went over budget on my 150 on that project, close to 220, and just took it in the teeth.
Yeah.
And her and I both had no business being in that business because she wasn't designing clothes for herself. She was designing for 6-foot runway models. My wife's 5'1" and curvy. She's a dope streetwear designer, and she was designing like high-end haute couture, which is great because she was great at it, but none of her homies can wear it. And what the fuck do I know about high-end fashion and how to make that happen online? And my ego was big coming off of a win I had. And I just felt like anything I touched would turn to gold. And I took it right in the fucking teeth, like hard.
And what else can you do at that point, right? It's just a learning curve. Yeah,
but being extremely naive to thinking that I was going to go into an industry that I had no business being in a segment that we had no business being in, and make magic happen was a very, very, I think in this case is the one time I'll use the word humbling experience in that sense. My ego was put in check real quick.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of entrepreneurs fall into a trap again, like you mentioned, you kind of just use data, but wasn't really, I guess for you, your passion or something that you were really interested in. At the end of the day, it's just something that could have made money, or, you just followed it, right? So
every time I tried to make money, because I could have just made money, I never made money. That's probably the distillation of my life to date.
Yeah, no, that's so important. And you also mentioned this topic of a team, and a lot of, founders just meet a couple of friends and usually turns out okay. But you have an interesting dynamic. One, your co-founder is your wife, and the other one is your wife's brother, right?
Yep, and my brother-in-law. At this point.
Yeah, your brother-in-law. Yeah. So, walk us through how that conversation all started. Like, I think it was your wife who introduced you to the idea of Midday Squares, and kind of walk us through the dynamic of how that team is played out, and like, how do you kind of manage both work and family at the same time?
Okay, so there's two really important distillations to this answer. One is, both my wife and my brother-in-law are not my partners because they are my wife and brother-in-law. So that's a really important piece to this story. I think if you are getting into business with family members for the sake of doing it because they're family members, you're going to get yourself into a lot of trouble. Mm-hmm. That's my opinion on that matter. My wife, believe it or not, her and I were best friends since 14. We didn't start dating until 26. She was the only other person I knew in my life that was able to dream as big as me. So she's been hustling entrepreneurship as long as I've been trying to do it. And she is an incredible operator. Incredible creative and like get shit doneer in the sense, I guess, it does fall into operations. Like, she built our whole manufacturing plant. This girl learns at a hyper speed. I've never seen someone learn at speeds like that for really complex problems, which I'm not good at. Like, I can never build a manufacturing plant. I don't know. My brain just doesn't work with that type of challenge, where hers really does. I saw that. I invested in her as an entrepreneur before we even dated. So I knew that I wanted to. So like, we really came together as people that wanted to work with each other first and then ended up getting married. So that's a really big piece of the story. And then my brother-in-law ends up being the most insane brand hustler I've ever seen. And I get to watch this now as I become close to the family for almost 3 years before we asked him to be part of it. He had this brand called Chase and Hunter, which there was no real idea behind it other than he was epic at college life. He loved being in college campuses, wanted to continue having fun with it after he graduated, and built a college lifestyle brand, but really had no operational experience, nor is that his strength. He's just not good at ops, but he's the best brand builder. I saw what he did. Like, I was watching, he had kids all over Canada, like, die hard. You know, when you have a die-hard brand advocate, not just I want to wear this stuff, like die-hard brand advocates. He infiltrated the NFL.
You mean like Nelk Boys, kind of like that?
Yeah, exactly. Like just really, they have a hardcore, but he was doing his own thing, right? Obviously, but like, they have a hardcore following. He had a hardcore following. He had NFL players. He had Sophie Turner from Game of Thrones wearing his shit, like, not because he's paying anybody.
Oh, shit.
Like he just had it. He had that magic that I don't have and my wife doesn't have. And so it was like, oh, wow. Could you imagine if we put all these three together? And so that answer the first part of that question is we're not partners because we're family members. We just happen to be family members. Very, very important piece to the story. Second is that in my first few, I've had 3 different partnerships. One where we made money and dealt with a lot of the stresses of growth and all that. I will never enter a partnership without having a business coach therapist on a weekly meeting. So I basically, before we got into this partnership, I actually said, I won't go forward with this unless we all commit to this. And here's why. And if you don't want to do it, cool. I'm just not game with moving forward on this. And so we all committed, and we've all been seeing James Gavin as our business coach and therapist every week. I see, once a week, I see him with the tripod, which is all 3 of us. Every other week, sometimes Jake and Les will see him. Sometimes you'll go by yourself. Sometimes Jake and I will go. I mean, it is religious. It's homework. It's hard. And that's the biggest learning I think I could say. If you guys ask me, what was the biggest learning in your 20s, Nick? It was that every partnership needs a committed therapy session built into it, or else the odds of it not working are very high. And to bring home some data, Y Combinator's been studying this for a long time because, they have so much to found their data.
Right.
85% of the failures at Y Combinator are driven by founder conflict. 85% of all failures at Y Combinator. That's a massive number.
That's a scary amount, right? So so like every relationship, doesn't matter whether it's business or personal life, you still need to work on it and make sure you manufacture something that's you can actually kind of both work in unison and enable whatever you're trying to do. So like to your point, you're like probably one of the first people I've talked to that say we actively use like a business coach to kind of help us through that whole process. Yeah.
I'm telling you, I actually wouldn't even invest in a company that came to me and didn't have that on staff. And the reason is a lot of people come from different upbringings, and people are at different points of their life have developed different communication styles. Not everybody is comfortable with hard conversations. So really what you're distilling when you bring together a coach therapist is to create a safe space for hard conversations to happen, and for there to be a progressive outcome to the hard conversations rather than this circle that never gets anywhere.
Right. Yeah. No, I love that. That's great. And we're huge advocates for it. I think every other episode we talk about, the importance of mental health and addressing those things, because all that stuff you can't hide. It's going to show up one way or another.
Yeah. When it comes to, like, I would say, humans don't realize that for 90% of your life, you were taught to verbalize and not communicate. So verbalizing and communication, two entirely different things. A lot of people think just because they open their mouth and sounds come out that communication is happening. It's actually
100%.
no, but it's very true. I can't tell you that. I think your listener, if there's one thing they can understand, no James Gavin, who's our therapist, there is no midday squares. Like it would not exist anymore.
Another person that we obviously we gotta shout out there, and I'm guessing it is your brother-in-law, because you guys have an amazing brand and you guys have such a no nonsense approach to your website. Like even your SEO blog, you're just like, hey, this is our SEO blog. We're just using words to bring interest to our web, like stuff like that. And you guys have like cool TikTok skits and things like that. So who's the mad genius behind that?
I would say so it's in our DNA. My wife is definitely the mad genius of the creative direction for the business. But I have to say, Jake was the one that brought us to life the importance of doing this. So no Jake, there is no midday squares in this essence that we know it today. And again, that goes back to the partnership, right? It's like that's everything that Jake was missing at Chase and Hunter was the executors component. So he knew the idea of where he wanted to go. He just didn't know necessarily how to get it to the level of execution that he wanted. And he got so far without that. So now that we have my wife, who's really capable of just bringing incredible ideas to fruition. So shout out to Jake and Les. That's really their baby. I don't have much to do with all that, but because that DNA is now rubbed off into me, when I did go create the blog for SEO, I was able to come up with that cheeky little fun way of doing it, because I hate doing it for the sake of for just doing it and not being transparent. I really hate that stuff.
Could you actually talk us through like what the difference between marketing and branding is? Because I think like there's usually a distinction between the two, and a lot of people think it's the same thing.
Yes.
And you guys do well on both of those categories.
Absolutely. So brand is the extension of the permission that you're trying to give anybody. So brand is not the marketing. Marketing is the distribution of the brand, is what we like to think about it at Midday Squares. I would ask yourself this question. If you were to go give a TED talk on whatever thing you're trying to bring into the world, what would your 10 minutes look like of what you're trying to get across in that conversation? And that's kind of like your hero content for the extension of everything that your brand should be. For us, it took some time to figure it out, but we knew where we wanted to go. And so I think, what is Nike's brand? Well, Nike's brand is the permission to be an athlete. They give every single person the permission to be an athlete, whether or not you yourself are an athlete. That's their brand. Apple is the permission to be a creator. Everything that they do is the permission to be creator. They never sell you on feature sets. They sell you on how you can use their tools to create. And for us, we really got it down that our brand, to your guys' point, is the permission to be yourselves. That's all Midday Squares is trying to be, is this no bullshit company, in the sense of not no bullshit and this is our ingredients or any of that. And I'm not throwing a jab at RX Bar. I know that's their motto. What I'm saying is that we're not, no, it's the truth. I'm not, because I'm a big fan of what they do. It's the no bullshit in the sense of like, I'm Nick. I swear a boat fuckload of that. I enjoy fucking smoking weed on the weekends. That will never change throughout my voice, whether today the company is at 10 million or 100 million a year. I think you should be able to be a publicly traded CEO and be able to be rogue about those things. Like we have, Les has a definition to what it means to be a woman entrepreneur. She doesn't like following, the typical way that people have broadcasted that. She has her voice on that. Jake has we just have this voice that's us. And so when we were sitting down, we knew that the brand had to be that, because it would be inauthentic if we came to market and tried to convince people to buy Midday Squares because we were vegan. Not what we're trying to sell. Because we use hemp protein. We're not trying to sell that. That's just a derivative of the tools in our product. What we're selling is a vibe. And the vibe comes with an incredible product. And that vibe is, if you're somebody who wants to make shit happen in life, just fucking do it however you fucking please. And that's what brand is for me. Then marketing is the distribution channels, how we interact with our consumers on Instagram, how we tell our stories, what do the stories make you feel, and all of that. It's like a filter. Once you have your brand set, everything that you make kind of goes through this filter, and as it comes out, it kind of has the identity of the brand sprinkled on everything. And so, yeah, marketing is the channel in which you're going to start screaming about your brand. And I mean, we're in a time of age where there's a million different channels to scream.
And I think you guys do a really good job of that, like that whole analogy that you just described through your podcast. So the content itself is kind of describing your brand because you guys are really true to yourself. And then the distribution channel happens to be in a form of a podcast through whatever channel you're releasing through.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the same. It actually goes a level higher than that in terms of hierarchy. Is we tell our story through content. Podcast is a channel to be able to distribute content. And the stories we tell, I don't know if you guys like go listen to any of our podcasts or any of our videos. We never sell midday squares ever.
Yeah. It's like all like real shit in terms of what you guys talk about. Yeah.
Ever. And I think that is the biggest, takeaway I ever learned from reading the Steve Jobs book was never sell your product ever. And, the perfect example is when he stood up on stage with, at the time when the iPod came out in 2001, it had the most advanced memory unit. So it was the largest amount of memory in the smallest possible device ever. And they could have gone on and on forever to talk about all the technological benefits of it. And all he did was grab on stage, showed everybody the iPod, and said 1,000 songs in your pocket. That was so much more powerful than any type of selling he could have done around the feature sets.
Yeah, that translation to the consumer was way more valuable than anything else he could have done or said. That was incredible.
1,000 songs in your pocket. You don't need to know the behind the scenes. And it was funny. I was speaking with Mike Fada, who founded
hemp parts, right?
Harvest.
Yeah.
They tried to sell a hemp bar, and I said, Mike, straight up, and we've become really close, him and I. I said and I was a huge fan of Manitoba Harvest. That was the first vegan protein that I started drinking. I told him the one fuck up you made on that protein bar was that you sold hemp. Nobody wants a hemp protein bar. We sell a hemp protein bar, and not one place on our website do we really talk about it being a hemp protein bar. And by nature, our distribution is like 10x the amount of what they've been able to achieve because we ain't selling the hemp.
And when you do that, I almost feel like it sounds like you're just pandering to that rather than actually explaining your product, right?
Correct.
So I think that's a great perspective. And I feel like that's something that trickles down into your brand as well. And like you've talked about this and how, you split up with your brother-in-law and your wife and things like that, kind of how your visions come together as entrepreneurs. Can you speak to that a little bit? Because we find that a lot of founders that we talk to, and not throwing anyone under the bus, but just from experience, we find that a lot of people they end up trying to be the jack of all trades. Like they want to be everything or they want to do everything. And you have a giant trade-off there, right? Like, can you speak to that and kind of how you kind of are not kind of going through that route for you guys with Midday Squares?
Yeah, no, we're maybe to a fault in the sense that we don't communicate it enough. We trust each other so much in our departments. Just to give you an example of how much trust, in both my Series A and Series B raise, myself and my two co-founders didn't meet once. Like, think about that.
Wow. Okay.
Like that's the level of trust we have for each other. They were brought in basically the top 3 VCs that we were going to go with, told the deal structure, everything, and made an appearance in the last mile. Because they just said, Nick, go handle this. This is what we trust you for. Manufacturing plant, Jake and I didn't see anything. My wife literally told us a budget, told us what she was doing, and just went and executed it. That's the level of, and we can move so fast because of that. There's no mundane conversation about all this jazz. Could I have had an input? Maybe. Did it matter? No. Right? all that my input would have had was time taken away from a task that we had no time to complete already. So like we trust each other in that sense, and we don't care for each other's opinions when they're not needed. And we actually have trained each other to come to each other when we feel each other's opinions are needed. The same like Jake, you know, he's a tall, like when he goes to LA or I don't know what the fuck's going on, he just goes and does it, right? And nor do I care because I trust. We meet once a quarter at best. We plan the year together, and then we're kind of like off to the races.
Would you say this was kind of something built in, or like something that you kind of learned from your therapy sessions as well, like with the business coach? Because that's something that it happens a lot, right? People just end up strategizing for hours and hours, and you never actually see the execution. And it's kind of like you can plan as however much you want, but if you're not getting shit done, nothing's going to happen.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's a mixture of everything, man. It's a mixture of the therapy, learning to trust, learning to communicate, here's the bottom line. Once you trust in a human, the magic begins to happen. Once humans link up, and I'm talking real trust, the type of blind trust to say, go complete our Series B, and I'm not going to ask you a single fucking question. Like, think about how hardcore that is. That's a big milestone for a company. For the founders to not really be trying to be on top of it all together. When you reach that level of trust, you've now unlocked levels to how fast you can move. And so your answer is it's a mixture of everything. It's a mixture of us having been through shitty partnerships in the past. It's a mixture of us really having had a long history together. I met Jake by chance when I was 9. So we grew up in the same communities. We weren't randomers to each other. And then there was this level of family that was built on top of it, which adds a level of trust. That's the beauty about family business, okay? I say it all the time.
Yeah.
It's like using leverage in investing. If you use leverage, you maximize your returns, but you also maximize the downside, right? The downside becomes a lot more heavy when you use leverage. Getting into family business is the same. Your ups, if you do it properly, are huge dividends to be had, but also massive downside to be had. And so if you approach it properly and unlock that true trust, you're unstoppable.
And I think you can apply that to anything you do in life. Like if you're doing a sale, like you're likely to have a better chance of a person that actually trusts you versus that is just a cold call or cold message, whatever it is, and you're trying to build that relationship. So, or even in the end, like what can teams, like in your, like if you were to say like within like 2 sentences, what can a team do to build a better kind of, I guess, culture for trust?
Is to authentically be yourself. That's the start. That's how you scale trust. So you have no idea how many people will message me to do, big deals with big distribution partners. And they say, I feel like I trust you because I've listened to you and I just don't know I have that vibe. And the reason why they feel that way is because it's true what they're saying. Is humans have an incredible ability to smell out bullshit. Yeah. Everybody has a vice. Everybody has something. So the second you're not presented with the true facts, you already have a subconscious mistrust in the human. If you present unauthentically this perfect version of yourself every time you come into a work environment, you're already creating a facade of, should I be able to trust this person or not? And it's happening at a subconscious level. And so my whole life, I've always just been super vulnerable. I've always called it like it is. I've stayed true to myself, even though it's gotten me into trouble along the way. It's all been good trouble because it was never me compromising who I was. That's how you build trust at scale. And maybe we're crossing the line at Midday Squares with how we handle it, but we don't give a fuck because we truthfully believe that if we scale, there's literally a section. If you come to work at Midday Squares, we ask you to sign, not because it's legally binding, because I just want to throw it all, that says if you are uncomfortable with the idea of Nick slapping Leslie's ass in the middle of the day by whatever, then this is probably not the place for you. It literally says it. Because every now and then I slap my wife's bum when we're walking by each other or stuff. I can't have to do this version of me. Sometimes I say erroneous, completely outrageous shit. And I can't have that held against me. So I got to just throw it out there to the point where, you know, as we're getting, I'm creating this webpage and it's myself. I'm putting out all my shit on the internet. I have this picture that's out there of my wife. Like, I was wasted when I was 16 years old. There's my testicles with like a happy smiley face on it. I'm going to put that out there because the truth is that it's a free life once you start living without the constraints of the facade. And so that's how you create a real culture of trust.
I love that, dude. I don't know if you've watched 8 Mile with Eminem, like that old movie. That his last rap scene where he's just like trashes himself. He's like, what are you gonna say else? Right? Like, what else are you gonna say about me? Like, I put everything on the table. I love that. That's hilarious.
It's the truth,
but it's true. Like, yeah, like that's just how you gotta have to live it, right? So I appreciate that, and I feel like that's what resonates with people, and that's what resonates with your brand. Because as soon as we see it, it allows us to believe in you more and just be like, all right, well, I know you're not gonna just bullshit me with anything else.
No, Hunter, you have no idea how much backlash we got when we had this coconut problem of where our coconut was getting burnt because of the way we were doing processing, and we showed the whole video of it going down. Some buyers messaged me this, that, you know, the company's not going to trust in your supply chain. I'm like, guys, if you're going to drop us as a brand because of this transparency, then like, so be it. What the fuck you want me to tell you? But I'm not going to not tell my audience, the people that are choosing to purchase Midday Squares with their dollars, that for the last 2 weeks we shipped product that tasted like metal because this happened, and show them what happened and show them the factory, the inner workings of it. That's the shit that whether stores will want to carry us or not in the future, they'll have no choice because the consumer will demand it. And so I always say we as a company answer to two people: the consumer first and our partner second.
I feel like you've pretty much summed up everything that we could have asked you here, with everything about how true you are to your brand and how true you are to yourself. So that was great.
I do want to say one last thing on this note. And I've been having a lot of conversations with great founders, which is the takeaway is not to replicate Midday Squares. The takeaway is to be authentically true to who you are and whatever that is that you're doing. And if that means like I think that's where people get it twisted sometimes. Just because I swear doesn't mean you have to swear. It's like, just go all in on your truth. Who's a great example that I wanted to bring up that did this? Jeff from HVMN, he was really early in the biohacking movement. They're huge in keto supplements and stuff like that, and fasting. You know, Jeff, if you put me and Jeff together in a room, we're two entirely different people, but both founders. Jeff's content strategy was authentic to him. And Jeff was a pseudoscientist who was obsessed with running real scientific trials all the time. He did this in his downtime. And all of his content is authentic to that. They run trials. They do incredible, content around true hard sciences. And it works. And their community is huge and they're trusted. They're like the polar opposite of Midday Squares, but two entirely incredible communities. And I believe Jeff's success comes because if you met Jeff, HVMN is an extension of who he is as a human.
I love that. We're going to have to hit up Jeff soon, man. I feel like that would be he'd be a great guest for this.
Yeah, 100%. He's a great dude.
How we like to end our podcast always with our guests is just to kind of throw some quick questions at you just to get you, just to get your honest answers. But I feel like we've been getting your honest answer throughout all of this anyways, but let's do it, man.
Okay, let's do it.
All right. So you got a long day at work. How do you like to come home and unwind?
Oh, usually, okay. So 3 vices: beer, cigars, or weed.
Love it.
What type of beer though? specific?
I'm an everything type beer guy.
Oh,
like
really?
I'll go from like a hardcore like Labatt 50/50 to like a IPA from Florida to back to, you know, grunge. I love beer. I'm a beer lover, period.
Sweet.
Awesome. So I worked this in because Midday Squares has like the vegan built into it, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that. Do you have a favorite vegan dish, or does that not exist?
Basically any Punjabi.
Nice.
It's my favorite. It's my favorite.
Awesome.
Are either of you Punjabi by any chance?
Me.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
It's my favorite cuisine. Plant-based cuisine is that.
Sweet.
Awesome. We love it. This is probably a bit deeper, I guess, sort of. How do you want to be remembered?
Oh, as the realest dude alive. It's not even that hard. I've always just wanted as the realest dude alive. That's it.
Dude, you're already living it. And lastly, the question that we get a lot of pushback on, or I guess a lot of arguments on, is do you like pineapple on your pizza, man?
Yes. Oh my God. It's my favorite.
Fuck. All right.
Yeah. Like pineapple on pizza with the right sauce is like the most underutilized pizza combination ever.
I love it.
Wait,
I love it.
You guys know this, that Hawaiian pizza was not even invented?
Yeah, it's Canadian. Yeah. It's funny how that works out, but you know, so we do this thing where we like basically count the streaks of like yes and no's. Like literally in the last like I think 6 or 7 episodes we just got no's. So I think last week was somebody broke the streak, but so now we're on a streak of 2 yeses. So
yeah,
man. I'm literally trying to find more no's than yeses because I'm not a fan personally, you know.
One of my favorite, and you know, bacon or ham with it too.
Love it, love it. Sweet and salt, dude. I've been preaching. I've been saying this whole time. He does not fuck with it. Whatever, it is what it is.
I love it.
Hey man, thanks so much. This is great. We love what you're doing, Midday Squares. I have yet to try it, but trust me, I'm going to be on this right now because I'm super excited to have. So
I'll say this: if you like decadent fudgy flavor, fudgy as your go. Almond Crunch gives you, I would say, like a Ferrero Rocher vibe, nice crunch, nice like, you know, almond butter vibe on it. And then the PBs, you know, PB chocolate, man. If you love PB chocolate, then that's like the best thing ever.
Yeah. And before we end this off, where can we find you guys? Where can someone find Midday Squares?
Yeah, best way to really keep up with like what's going on in the day-to-day is our Instagram at Midday Squares. And then our podcast, Midday Squares Uncensored. We're on all the platforms. Every 10 days we drop a new episode. And it's really a roundtable discussion of like live what's going on at the business and what's like on our minds. So it's a real great way to just keep track with what it's like to build a company from zero. And we're, you know, the end goal is 100 million of revenue in our first like massive sprint. And so, hey, you get to watch it with us.
Sweet.
Love it. And we know you're going to hit it, and we'll catch up with you when you do.
Thanks, brother. We should. I mean, I'm happy to come back on the show every 25 mil.
We're holding you to that, man. We love it. Go enjoy your beer and your joint now.